US President Joe Biden met the Ukraine Foreign and Defense Minister at Marriott Hotel in central Warsaw in Poland, in his first talk with top Kyiv official since Russia's invasion began. A senior US defense official told the reporters that Pentagon has seen indication of Russia sending troops reinforcement from Georgia to Ukraine to support its offensive in Donbas region of Ukraine. The US has seen the first indication that Russia is trying to send in some reinforcement from Georgia. The US has seen the movement of some number of troops from Georgia. They don't have an exact number, the official said during a press briefing on Friday. On February 24th, Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine, which is not going according to plan for Russia, as Ukraine started to gain and push back the Russian military out of the Ukraine. Now Russia's invasion of Ukraine has raised the specter of something considered almost unthinkable until recently, the use of the tactical nuclear weapons. How big is Russia's nuclear arsenal? Russia has the largest number of nuclear warheads of any country, according to the SIPRI Peace Research Institute in Stockholm, which puts the figure at 6,255. Tactical nuclear weapons come in various sizes, and their impact depends on whether they explode at the ground level or above the Earth's surface. You might think, aren't the nuclear weapons are at last resort? Yes, but the Ukraine and the Western capitals fear that Putin finds himself cornered. A tactical nuclear strike would be intended to break the resistance of Ukraine forces and force President Volodymyr Zelensky to surrender. What does the Kremlin say of this? On Tuesday, Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov was asked 3 times by CNN interview to rule out the use of nuclear weapons, but he pointed instead towards Russia's nuclear doctrine published in 2020, in which you can read all the reasons for nuclear arms to be used. If it is an existential threat to Russia, then it can be used by Russia's concept, said Peskov. Recent claims from Kremlin about the Ukraine developing chemical and biological or even nuclear weapons, dismissed as disinformation by Western officials, are a cause of concern. Is this an alarm sign? Maybe or possibly. A British think tank told AFP that she doubted Putin would deploy tactical nuclear arms. The military repercussions would be unpredictable, to say the least, and potentially extremely dangerous for Russia. Since NATO or the United States might feel obliged to enter the conflict directly, that's the exact scenario that Russia is trying to avoid, said the think tank person. The clock is ticking for the International Space Station, with NASA last week declaring plans to crash ISS back to the Earth in 2031. The iconic piece of space infrastructure will be nudged out of its orbit and eventually meet its watery demise when it plunges into the ocean and smashes into pieces. That day will mark the end of 32 years of space station construction, experiments, photography, and since November 2000, continuous human habitation, all while hurtling around the planet once every 90 minutes or so. On New Year's Eve, NASA extended the space station's operation from 2024 to 2030, given the space station's decades of international cooperation, not to mention the cash needed to put it up and running. So why is ISS being retired? The space station's international focus has been a wonderful thing in any way. The US and Russia announced plans to build it together in 1993, and Japanese, Canadian, and European Space Agency signed on later. The first segment of the space station, the Zarya Control Module, launched aboard the Russian Proton rocket from Baikonur Cosmodrome, Kazakhstan in 1998. Tons of parts have been added, removed, and replaced over the years since. It was never the idea that the space station would be permanent. This is partly because, quite simply, it's gunking up the wearing out. It's not just humans living on board. Bacteria, fungi, and other microbes survive and thrive there too. Imagine living in a caravan and you couldn't open the windows, but you have to keep it clean. The outer surface are becoming onto. The space station orbits about 400 kilometers above the Earth's surface. Any objects below about 500 kilometers naturally fall back to Earth, so the space station is regularly boosted up to counter this effect. Docking and undocking of the vehicles ferrying supplies and people to and fro can put a strain on the space station structure, and various cracks and leaks have been patched up over the years. The constant maintenance and upkeep needed to keep the station in working condition or working order and support inhabitants are expensive, so doing away with the space station will save plenty of cash. For instance, NASA estimates savings to be approximately $1.3 billion in 2031, ramping up to $1.8 billion by 2033, that could be put towards efforts to explore further and faster into the deep space. How will the International Space Station come down and where it will land? The space station descent won't be a random tumble back to Earth. Once the space station is emptied and stripped of whatever needs to be saved, operators on the ground will control its descent using thrusters, gradually putting it on the course for its eventual crash. Its final resting place will be submerged in a patch of water dubbed the spacecraft cemetery, more formally called the South Pacific Oceanic Uninhabited Area. Hundreds of spacecraft have plopped in this zone, which is the furthest location from any land. What will take its place? The International Space Station is the only fully operational and habitable space station up there at the moment, but it wasn't the first and it certainly won't be the last. With its sights set further afield to deep space, the US Space Agency is funding commercial partners and outsourcing its low Earth orbit activities to companies such as Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, and Lockheed Martin. It has already permitted Axiom Space to attach modules to the space station, which will eventually detach to become their own low Earth orbit facility. Enrico Palmero, head of the Australian Space Agency, says this is a new suite of space station, particularly those from commercial operators, presents a terrific opportunity for the Australian space sector. Also, he says their industry will have a range of choices to suit customer needs and fast-track their access to the space, which will ensure human research and development opportunities are maximized. So what do you think? Are you excited about the new private space station? Will the space of research and exploration thrive as International Space Station?